Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. We've recently launched our Patreon page, which can be found at cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's an easy way for those who are interested in this show to help out by simply pledging a small amount each month in sponsorship. Now that could be as little as $5 a month, which is about £3.80, or as much as you like. You will enable us to dedicate more time creating more content to help you, including videos, more blog posts, and even more shows. So if you can, head over to cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon and get involved. In this episode, we talked to Jay Miller about why developers need coaching in productivity. Jay dreamt of helping programmers to achieve their career and life goals, and through that dream and his passion, he created Productive Developers. As a United States Marine veteran, an IT professional with over a decade of experience, Jay has trained hundreds of tech professionals all over the world. So welcome to The Cynical Developer, Jay.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to come on.
For you, anytime, man.
Thanks. And for a little bit of background, myself and Jay met through Chad Bostick's podcast, which unfortunately is no longer running, which was Hello Tech Pros, which must be 2 years ago now, something like that.
Yeah, around there. And then of course you were a guest on Productivity and Tech podcast, which is also no longer running. So.
Yeah. Let's hope this. Let's hope this isn't a trait. Yeah, and my time on your podcast was talking about being productive and things. And I've also been obviously on Chad's Hello Tech Pros and talked about productivity. And I think it is pretty much a hot topic for developers and something that many of us overlook. I think that we spend a lot of time focusing on the code and what technologies we should be learning, but very little time on this thing called productivity.
Well, it's a dual angle problem because you have developers that want to be as efficient as possible because that makes them more desirable in the job force. You know, when they're trying to find jobs, it's like, oh, well, I can do all of this. And being productive as a developer doesn't necessarily mean lines per code written per minute. Like it doesn't really work that way. It's like this intangible, like, can I trust you to get the things done that need to be done and like all of that. And it's such a gray area. But then on the opposite side of that, you have the businesses who are, having to hire developers. And when you think about that, like, developers aren't cheap. We definitely demand more than a minimum wage. And they want to be able to get the most per developer as possible. So you have, the company saying, I want to get as much from you as possible. And then the developer saying, I want you to be as efficient as possible. I want to be as efficient as possible and make myself more desirable. But then you start, adding things into that, like work-life balance and mental state and anxiety disorders and many other issues that developers deal with on a regular basis. It becomes this very hard to manage aspect of our lives. And that's why a lot of people burn out. I mean, that's why, kind of my going slogan has been avoid burnout, avoid turnover, become more productive. Like that. That's kind of like the three tenets. That's the way I work.
Yeah. And you touched on a few things there that I've definitely struggled with, probably still struggle with now, and stuff like burnout. Yeah, I've burnt out and hit rock bottom several times. And if listeners want to find out more about that, I believe your Productivity and Tech podcast is still available. The archive, is that still online?
Yeah, so there's an archive collected on internetarchive.org. Yeah, that organization, and it is there, and I can actually give you a link to that, a link to your episode specifically. It'll just be the raw MP3, but yeah, you can download it.
Yeah, that'd be good, and then you guys can go and get a bit more on the backstory and what myself and Jay talked about there. But one of the other things that you said there was a work-life balance, and that's something I really struggle with is finding the time to sort of stop and go, what are you doing? Sit back, and do nothing for a little while. I always do too much, and to be fair, it's what the podcast was born from. I got rid of some of the other things I was doing in my spare time, in air quotes, and I had all of a sudden spare time, and it was like, oh, what am I going to do with this 3 or 4 hours I've got every week? And that's what bore the podcast. So it is very, very hard, and I guess with all the technology and that's out there, and all the new technology that's coming along, you feel like you need to be always doing something.
So one thing that I've learned, and this is from experience and from just observing others' behavior, developers are very passionate about the things that they are developing, especially in today's age. You know, we talk about this extremely short lifespan of developers within companies for the millennial generation. You have, you know, the average length of time that people are staying with one company is less than 2 years. And people are like, well, why is this happening? Why is it happening? Well, people no longer care about staying for 30 years, getting a golden watch, and retiring. The things that they're working on interest them, and they want to work on those things. The problem is with that is you get so caught up in being interested in the thing that you're working on that, like you said, you forget to put it down. You know, funny enough, I haven't had the Pit podcast in about 5 months, and I still record interviews. I convince people that, hey, I want to sit down and talk with you, and I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing, but I really just want to talk with you because I'm passionate about talking to people in the community, advancing the community, helping people be more productive. I want to help those people. And just because I don't have to go through all of the laborious process of editing and uploading and sharing and doing content creation and promotion in those areas, I'm still doing all these things in other areas. It's just I'm doing less of it, which has kind of made me a little bit less burned out.
Yeah. And productivity, I guess it's a funny thing because you could ask 100 people what being productive means to them, and get different answers. Because like I've said, I don't do downtime very well, and I always want to do something that is productive. So something I think that is productive is, you know, writing code, improving my skill set, maybe working on something for the podcast, working on something for my websites, you know, something like that with an end goal in there. But to somebody else, being productive might be completely different. And if you've not read it, I'm currently reading The Goal by Elihu Goldratt. And I probably just butchered his name there, and apologies for that. But it's the book that the Phoenix Project is based on. And if you haven't read the Phoenix Project, then as a software developer, you definitely need to go and read that. But his understanding of being productive, and they were wanting to bring in all these machines into his processing plant to make things more productive, and in reality, they didn't make things more productive. Because and I won't go into too many details because I'll give away the whole point of reading the book. But productivity, I guess, means different things to many different people. But what I guess I'm getting at here is, what is productivity to you? What, you know, Jay, what would you say it was? What's the productive developer about?
So for me, productivity is simply, well, it's simply defined with a caveat. You know, like pretty much everything in our lives in tech is like, oh, that's simple. It depends. You know, for me, being productive just means when something needs to get done, I have the control necessary to ensure that it gets done to everyone's expectations. And the reason I say with that caveat, that also means if I can't do that, then I don't. And kind of breaking that down a little bit is, you know, people worry so much about, oh, you know, am I unproductive if it takes me 15 minutes to test code? No, you're not. You just got to understand that it takes 15 minutes to test code. Now, if it takes you 15 minutes to test code because you spend 3 minutes on the actual code and then 12 minutes on Facebook, well, then you're starting to go outside the boundaries and expectations that people would have for you. They would say, how long would this take if I hit start? Once it's done, I'm done. 3 minutes? Okay, how long does it take you? 15 minutes? There's a productivity problem. If you are completely unable to achieve the demands, it's better to say, I cannot meet those demands, and here's why. Now, again, this is where productivity gets sticky. If your boss says, I understand why you can't meet those demands, that's a perfectly reasonable answer. I will ask someone else to do it. Congratulations, productivity still achieved. If they say, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to try anyway, well, then we have some productivity issues, but you got to have that further discussion on, is it on behalf of the developer? Is it on behalf of the manager? And that's kind of what I do. I work with both teams and individuals because not everything that causes us to be quote unquote unproductive is our fault. And there are things that we cannot control. And those moments, productivity is within the areas that I can control. I am doing the absolute best that I possibly can.
Sure. Yep. So there we go. It's another take on what productivity means. And
absolutely. Earlier you mentioned something. You mentioned like adding more tools to the process to be more productive.
Yep.
Yeah, no, never. That usually doesn't work. Like I've just come to learn that I'm using 3 tools to be productive, and if I add this 4th tool in, I'll be more productive. Well, I was interviewing someone earlier today, and we talked about it. There are 3 levels to productivity. There's the tool, the process, the person. Usually, the tool is not the problem. More than the tool, the process will be the problem, but that's often not the root cause. Usually, the root cause is the person, and that's the hard part, because people often come to me saying, well, I don't need a coach because I can just download OmniFocus or Todoist or blah, blah app. And whatever app is, that's going to make me more productive. And then when you check in, 3 months later, they're trying a new app because that new app is going to make them more productive. And they're trying a new app after that, or some other app gets announced. And they're like, oh, I've got to move everything to this because this is going to make me more productive. And you start to look and say, okay, it's not the app, obviously, because you've tried many of those and your problem still exists. Let's look at the underlying cause of the problem, which is either the process or the person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Now, I use Trello to manage the podcast, and that is for knowing who I am going to reach out to talk to come on as a guest, who I have reached out to and who I'm waiting to hear back from, who I have heard back from, when I'm going to be recording, and who I've recorded with. It also has things in there like get on there and update the About Us page, maybe go on there and update the guest page, which I am seriously lacking behind on at the moment. And having all that stuff in there, when I check it daily, I'm productive because it's always then in the forefront of my mind, and I make time to get in there and actually do stuff with it. But then over the last sort of, I would say maybe 2 months, I've become less productive with it because I haven't been checking in on it. And because I'm not checking in on it, I'm not thinking about it, I'm not worrying about it, and things are getting left behind. And that's not from me being lazy, it's just from life getting in the way.
Well, like you said, you understand how you best work.
Yep.
You've created the process to put in place how you work best. And then you found the tool that best sustains that process. And that is the proper way to go through that system. But even when we have the system in place, it's just like with code. Like, we have tests in place. We do all these things to make sure our code is good, yet bugs still arrive. Like, I mean, it's life. That's how it happens. Things happen. Bugs will appear. And when they appear, that is why I exist. Like, yes, I want to help get people get productive, but most importantly, I want to ensure whenever something is going on in their life, if you're so used to the system just working and all of a sudden it doesn't work, it is much easier for me to come in, look at what you're doing, and say, hey, you're telling me that this is the problem, this is the area, this is why it's not working. Why don't we try this? Even if we try it just for a while, things are a little crazy, and then once those get settled, we can move back to what we were doing. But let's create this sub process. Let's document it. That way, in the future, when things happen again, because lightning does strike twice in the same place every once in a while, we know how to fix it. Or, which with me having a passion for community and helping other people, not just on a one-to-one, but on a large scale, so that I can say, hey, when James, when the crap hit the fan for James, this is what helped get him out of that rut.
Yep.
Maybe I can try it for, Jamie over here.
Sure. So we've touched on the fact that you've become this productivity coach, but what exactly does that mean? Because are you just sort of suggesting that you don't use this tool and you do things this way? What makes up a productivity coach?
So I liken a productivity coach to a basketball coach. I might have to teach you the rules of how to play basketball, but ultimately I'm not there to basically just say, no, you can't do that. You have to dribble first. You can't do that. You have to dribble first. Like we're going to go through dribbling, and then after that, we're going to go through scoring, and we're going to go through proper defense. We're going to cover those topics, but we cover them based on what we know. If you're starting at the base level, yeah, we have to cover all those things at a very simple level. If you have the basics down, write things down, put things, get them out of your head, get them onto something. If you subscribe to GTD, or if you use Kanban, if like a lot of people that I help usually know what needs to happen, but they don't know how to tie it all in. Like, I need this is the end goal. I need to make this happen. Okay, I'm going to help you get to that point, just like a basketball coach would help you win a game. You're asking me what that looks like, or like how does that work? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, so I guess it's what is a productivity coach from your point of view, and I think you've summed it up quite well there. It's some of us know what we need to be doing, but we just don't know how to execute on it. And putting it back to the basketball analogy, we all know that you need to get that ball through that hoop, but how we get there, how we work as a team to do it, the fundamentals we might understand that we pass the ball from one person to another one, and then you throw it in the air and it goes through that hoop. But it's how do you pass that ball most efficiently? What do we need to be looking out for? What are the gotchas, like the guy coming up on your wing, to take that ball from you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and even when you look at it that specifically, we talked about what you do when, life throws a wrench in your plans. Like, that is essentially what a coach does. They say, okay, I've learned over time and through experience that these are the kinds of wrenches that get thrown. And I guess now we're not talking about basketball anymore. We might be talking about dodgeball. But
if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Exactly. So when these things come up, based on the experience that we've had in our personal lives, because again, I have experience as a developer, I have experience in the IT space. I've worked as a manager, I've worked as a teacher and a leader. So I've seen a lot of these things come up, and I've started building basically a library of like, okay, when this happened for this person, this is what they did, and this was the result. And okay, let me try that with James. Okay, well, for James, he got a similar result, but this happened. Okay, let me document that and put that in my playbook. So now I know when this happens with these parameters, instead of doing this thing, you need to do this other thing. And basically just building that catalog so that you don't have to deal with the stress. You don't have to worry about it. You can just focus on whether or not you're able to get the stuff done.
Yeah, and I guess you can you can liken it back to, I guess, a bit like Stack Overflow. Since we're all talking about developers, we are developers, is the fact that you come up against a problem and maybe you've tried to fix it yourself and you can't do it. So you go on to Stack Overflow and go, this is the issue that I'm facing, and you understand to a point what your issue is, and you want someone to come and help you understand it and help you fix it. And you are like those people on Stack Overflow coming back going, well, what you've done is you've missed a semicolon here. Maybe not that basic, or you need to use this library to fix your problem, but I guess it fits in well with that.
Yeah, and I mean the one difference here is I am not a developer coach. I am a productivity coach for developers. If I wanted to help every developer out there with their code, I could not do it better than Stack Overflow could. I mean, there are definitely some brilliant developers that can look at your code no matter what language it is and say, here's the problem. You're using this module instead of this other module that would be more efficient for your code base. I don't operate in the business of dealing with the code. I operate in the business of dealing with the person that writes the code. This is something I spoke about a little bit in a blog post that I recently published. And with that, it said, throughout my time as a developer and throughout my time as a person in tech, I became less interested in the code and the tech and more interested in the person. And seeing that person be successful, seeing that person being productive is really my end goal. Whether they're talking about writing better code, dealing with their finances better, being able to just handle life as anxiety creeps in and things like that. Those are the things that I'm interested in. And I'm not going to have the fix for everything. Sometimes I'll just tell people, hey, you might want to go see a therapist. But that's because I know what I can help people with, and that is productivity. I've been studying productivity longer than I've been writing code. And I have a lot of contacts in the coaching space, in the productivity space, and I'm able to utilize their intelligence, their history, their background, their knowledge on top of my own to really build a package that helps us make better developers, not in the sense of writing better code, but better developers in that they stay in the industry longer, they move faster, they get promoted faster, they're able to have compassion and empathy for one another. And overall, that helps the overall community better than just helping the individual.
Sure. So you've been in the coaching world for a while. How did you end up there? Because I guess being a Marine, being a developer, and then being a productivity coach, they're not three professions that you would pull out straight away and say these go together.
Well, I don't want to ruffle too many feathers, but when I first started, I was a minister. I was a youth minister. I was a youth minister at like 18. Like getting out of high school and wanting to help people, with faith-based things. And what I learned was similar to the same thing. It wasn't about going up and giving the sermon or giving the lesson. What was more important to me was being able to walk with that person through life with them and being able to provide assistance where I can. I tell people I'm a glorified cheerleader. I want to give you the advice. I want to give you the tips and the tools, but most importantly, I want to see people succeed. I want to see them win, and I'm going to be rooting in their corner until it happens. As far as how I got into coaching, it's kind of a mystery to me as well. With the military, I did a lot of leadership stuff because we transfer a lot, and when you transfer, someone's got to take your job, and basically you're from the time you get there, you're training the person underneath you to take your job, and eventually you leave, go somewhere else. Meanwhile, someone's training you to take their job. So it's just the way that our military system works, and I think most do work that way. When I got out of the military, I fell in love with productivity because I felt like I was unproductive and I didn't want to get fired. So, I tell people my origin story is very humble. Like, I went from the military where you can't get fired to the private sector to where it's very easy to get fired. And I basically said, I want to be the most productive person out there. That way, when they go, we definitely can't fire Jay because he's he's pretty productive. He gets stuff done. When we need it done, it gets done, and he's happy, he's healthy, he's not taking too many sick days. Life's great in his area. We need to keep him, and that has been the attitude. And I just have a passion for telling people about it, and for writing about it, and for getting to know people. And honestly, that's where the coaching came in. Was I started sitting down with people from the podcast, with people who listen to the podcast, and they would say, "Hey, I'm having this productivity problem. Can you give me a few pointers?" And sure, why not? And then I sat down with a couple of coaches, and I was telling them what I was doing, and they were like, "You need to cut that out right now, because people aren't going to hire us if they can go to you for pennies on the dollar." So they were like, "Well, look, how about this? How about we show you what coaching looks like?" And part of that came into me getting my own coach and really learning what it meant to be a coach. And from there, as I started talking to more and more business owners, they were like, "You really need to charge more, because how many people can you help if it's just you working at $5 a piece? You can't really do the deep dive. You have to be able to sustain your own lifestyle. You have to be productive with your pricing." And that's, I live in a world where everything revolves around how can I do this as productively as possible. And again, it just all goes back to those three tenets. The person, how do I best work to create a process around it? And only then do I look at what tools do I have at my disposal that can make that a reality.
Sure. So you've been a developer as well. What is it that makes being productive for a developer difficult? Why aren't we as productive as we should be?
So most of us are writing for others. There are a few of us, the Brett Terpstras out there, that are writing code only for ourselves, and that becomes a challenge. We can do things to our own expectations and be happy. And the problem is when we have to build something that our boss is going to love, that, hey, he wants it done in 5 minutes, but we can't get it done in 5 minutes. And, you try anyway, you get it done in 7 minutes, and he's content with that. But because you rushed so much to get it done, you introduced a bunch of bugs, and now the end user isn't happy. And that is worse than your boss not being happy.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we also have some, depending on your job, you might have some things that normal productivity principles don't apply. A lot of people say, don't live in your inbox. Don't live in your inbox. It's important that you get things out of your inbox. Inbox zero, that big myth. I tell people, if you work in tech, inbox zero is the worst thing you could possibly do, because you're going to have people that will tell you things that you want to hold on to for a while. Maybe you don't work out of your inbox, but your inbox should have important things in it. Case in point, I recently had to change my phone number, and I had to update a license for some software, and they said, "Oh, well, it's tied to this phone number, so it's going to take a month for us to get things done, because we have to have you verify your driver's license and all this other stuff." And meanwhile, I'm like, I can't wait a month to use this. I need it now.
Yep.
And because I had the original message saved in my inbox sometime a long time ago, I was able to send it to him and say, "Look, here's the confirmation showing that I set everything up at this point. Here's, all the other information, because I have certain tools that I use that allow me to keep license numbers set up. I just need you to point this number to this number and allow me to have access." And they go, "Oh, well, since you had this information, we can get this done in a couple minutes," and greatly sped up the process. And you can't do that if you delete things out of your inbox. You can't do that if you have, and people say, "Oh, well, I'll just put it in notes." Well, you can't do that if you have 9,000 notes and you can't find anything. Like that's why I don't use Evernote. Evernote was great for me until I had 15,000 notes, and then after that, it was just as unruly as not using Evernote.
Yep. Yeah, I do like Inbox Zero, but the way that I do it is that I delete the crud, the crap that's in there. Anything that is of use, I file away under other folders within the inbox. So And I only apply that to some of my email addresses. I think my personal email address, I think I've got something like 9 or 10,000 unread emails in there. And I tend to go through every so often and clear some of it out. I know I do have a rule that looks at emails over 12 months old, and if they're unread after 12 months, it deletes them.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I tell people when they say, "Oh, I have a problem with email," like, okay, process the email, do what you get, like, and I say process it, like parse it basically. Is there any information in here that's necessary? Yes. Yep. Okay, is it necessary now? Yes. Okay, take that bit of information, put it in a task manager, put it in a calendar, put it somewhere. Then archive the email.
Yep.
And then you're done with it. On to the next one. You can do that, and that takes less than 30 seconds at that point. Like, okay, Oh, okay, here's the important thing. Here's a trick that I do with my email now. I write down what I'm asking first, because there are so many times when they'll start an email with, in 1942, the Winston Churchill determined that, all this other stuff, and then somewhere buried deep inside of there is the actual point. But wouldn't it just be better if, like, at the top of the email you said, question, here's why?
Yeah.
Well, and just leave it at that.
That's how I write my emails when I'm in work. And over the years, it's got me in hot water because people think that I'm being abrupt and rude because I haven't asked them how their day is going. I haven't sort of talked about how the flowers smelt outside that morning. I've just gone in and gone, "Hi, Jeff," whatever their name is. I wanted this yesterday. I've not had it. Will I have it today? Where is this? What's this doing? Here's some more questions about it. Get back to me as soon as you can. And people sort of take it as, "Oh, right. He's not very nice, is he? He's in a grump." It's like, no, I'm just writing down what I want.
I mean, have you ever been, like, paralyzed on how to start an email because you had, like, at first there might be, like, 3 men in the email, so you say gents or gentlemen, and then, like, hey, oh, wait, I need to tell, one of the female employees, and then you read it, you're like, well, I can't say ladies and gentlemen because there's only one lady, and I can't say, hey, everyone. And this is a problem that people deal with. And again, with developers, you have levels of anxiety. We are one of the few people that actually care about this stuff. Yeah. Like, inclusivity in tech is getting better. We still have a long way to go. It's getting better, but it is, in my opinion, light years ahead many other industries. When I worked in IT, I worked in the janitorial service. Like, I worked with people who are janitors, and most people think, okay, a janitor is, at least in America, in Southern California, where I live 30 minutes from Mexico, people tend to believe that the janitor is a, 50-year-old Hispanic male, which is not the case. In most cases, your janitorial management or your janitors will often be Hispanic females. And, other females. And there's a thing about that where, like, we have to create content. We have to create things that mean things to other people. And it can paralyze us. It can be debilitating. It can literally just stop us in our tracks. And that's why I'm there for support. That is the whole reason why we need a coach. Is like, hey, in my emails, I don't ever put a name on it. I just put what I need. Thank you at the end. I hope you're having a great day, to alleviate your oh wow, he's pretty brash problem. And then, like, that's literally my signature. Is I hope you're having a great day. Respectfully sent. Yeah. Jay Miller.
Sure. So I guess what you're saying is that productivity for developers is more than a really strong coffee and using the Pomodoro technique then?
Absolutely. And those are things that you can use. Those are, like, great starting steps. Like, hey, I need to work in small bursts. Cool. Cup of coffee, Pomodoro method. I still do that to this day. I make 4 cups of coffee. I work until 1 cup is done. I go get up, walk around, probably run to the restroom after drinking that much coffee, sit down, continue pouring my next cup of coffee, and get to work. Like, that is a system that I still use. Do I think about it in that way? No, that's just, I like coffee. So, for me, it works. But when my boss says, man, you're sure taking a lot of breaks. And I go, well, I also have 4 cups of coffee. You're going to need to take breaks, 4 cups of coffee. But at the same time, I can say, yes, but here's where we are on every single project. Here's a status update. This is what I'm waiting on. This is what I just finished. We're on track. We're on schedule. We're ahead of schedule. If we are behind, here are the reasons. Here's X, Y, and Z why we're behind. And being able to identify all of those things, they go, oh, okay, well, enjoy your break.
Yeah.
You can't really argue with those results.
No, definitely not. And the Pomodoro technique, it's something that when I work from home, I use quite a lot. Just because you can get into that productivity flow and get things done. But I don't tend to use it very often in the office, although I guess give or take, it's a very similar process. Is the fact that, like you said, I'll make a coffee when I get in, and I'll drink that as I work. Once that's done, I will then go and take a walk back to the coffee machine, make another coffee, come back, work and drink at the same time until that's done, and then go back. Granted, I drink too much coffee, probably a very unhealthy amount of coffee, but we all have our vices. It could be worse.
Well, and for those that don't know, the Pomodoro technique is literally just this method of you set timers and you say, I'm going to work for 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break. Then I'm going to work for another 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And they were called Pomodoros because Pomodoro is just Italian for tomato. And the first people to do this would use these tomato timers. Like, basically, they were little egg timers that were shaped like tomatoes. You mentioned earlier, why is productivity for developers harder? Well, we work in what's called a focus-based industry, where you really need to get into that flow. You need to get into the zone. You need to zone out and really start working on your code. Well, and this is where I'm going to get nerdy. There's a book by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi that's called Flow. And it's all about getting into that deep flow state. Another good book for this is actually called Deep Work. And it's this similar concepts. Both of those authors tell you it takes time to get to that state. And it takes longer than 15 minutes often to get into that state. And once that state is interrupted, the process almost has to start over before you can ever get it. So for a developer, 15 minutes is rarely enough time to even start getting things done. And then you're already taking your first break. And then you have to pick yourself back up, figure out where you're going, check your news reader, check your podcast player, all these other things. When some people would say, oh, well, I just can't do Pomodoro then. Well, no, you can. The difference is, instead of setting a 15-minute timer, you set a 45-minute timer. And instead of taking a 5-minute break, you take a 10-minute break. It's the same concept. You're not losing any time in that manner. But again, why should the person that's writing code to make, the next Twitter, micro.blog, Facebook, you're not going to think about that. You've got enough stuff in your mind already to think about that. Let me, the person who read both of those books just because they seemed interesting, let me read them for you and give you that advice, because then you can focus on what's important.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes I will do 2 hours in of the Pomodoro, because 2 hours is the max that I can concentrate for, and I definitely need to take a break after that. And a lot of people, it's a lot less than that. And I think the book that you were referring to there with Deep Work is by Cal Newport, Deep Work Rules of Focused Success in a Distracted World. And I have read that book, and it was a very, very good read as well. I did enjoy that, but I will have to get a link off you to the other one that you mentioned, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the author's name at all.
Just know the name of the book is called Flow.
yeah. I will have to dig that out. I've got an Audible subscription, and I listen to a lot of these on Audible because I can listen to it at high speed and get through them very quickly. So I'll add that to the wish list if it's on there.
I think it is, actually. I think Flow is on there. I read it by Kindle. So.
Right. Yeah. I will go and check that out. So, if the listeners out there feel that they're being less productive than they need to be or they should be, and they want to improve, how can they find you? Where can they get in touch with you to help them improve?
So if you go to I almost said productivity and tech. That is not the answer. If you go to productivedevelopers.com, there will be a link that talks about getting your free assessment. And this is what I tell people. It is a free assessment. Like, I can at least determine whether you need my help or not. I'm not going to waste my time on someone that doesn't need my help. That would be the most unproductive thing that I can do. So sign up for a free assessment. If I feel like, yeah, I can help you, or if you even need help, then we'll talk what that looks like later. But it all starts at productivedevelopers.com. And then, from there, again, I don't like having, clients for 3 years. My goal is to get you in, figure out what the problem is, address it, have you try something out, follow up, and if we're great, we're great. We can pick up the next time you need some more help.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things you mentioned early on was that if you can help, you will help, and that might mean suggesting ways of working, suggesting techniques, and all that sort of stuff. But it may be going out and getting some professional help from a mental point of view. If that's, I'm not sure if that's the right term. Probably a bit of a UK-ism, but to do with mental health. It could be a consideration there that you may be feeling less productive because you're depressed or something like that. That does happen. It might not be what you're doing. It could be the mindset that you're currently in.
Well, as I mentioned before, I work in 3 arenas: the people, the process, and the tool. If you just need the tool, I'm going to give that to you for free. If you say, hey, I know exactly what I'm trying to do, I just need the tool that does that. If I know about it, I'll tell you about it. If I don't know about it or it doesn't exist, I'll tell you that too. Where I mainly work with people is when there's a process or personal problem. And again, if you suffer from depression, I cannot give you the tools needed for you to get out of your depression. That is not my area of expertise. I will let you know of anybody that I possibly can think of that could probably help you, but it can't be me. But what I can do is I can show you, okay, when you are in a state of mania, when you are in a state of depression, let's look at how you work, and let's create a process so that while you are while you're in a funk, you're still working at your best that you possibly can be at the time. That doesn't mean you're operating at 100%. That means, if you're only operating at 80, I want to get you to 80. If you're working at 90, I want to get you to 90. If you're working at 10, I want to at least get you to 10. But I'm going to definitely recommend that you do what it takes to get back up to 100, and that will not include just having conversations with me.
Sure. So what I'm going to do now is stop you from being unproductive and let you get back to doing something more productive with work and things like that, because we're just about out of time for today's show. So thank you for coming on and talking to us about productivity from a developer's point of view or perspective. It's been interesting, and it is an area that I find really interesting myself. Having been a developer, still am a developer. I've been a development lead and helping people with their code and stuff, and helping people to become better developers is something I really get a kick out of, and one of the reasons that this podcast exists. So thank you for coming on and sharing, and undoubtedly we will have more discussions about this sort of thing in the future.
Absolutely. And of course, we're recording this on the weekend, so the most productive thing I can do on the weekend is relax and get ready for Monday.
Definitely. I've got to go and finish painting the sandpit that I have been tasked with building for the children.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's technically being productive, although I have other things that I need to do because I'm out playing airsoft tomorrow, so I need to go get my stuff ready for that, and I also need to go and get something to eat. So I've got a lot of things to do in the next couple of hours before it gets too dark to see.
Sounds like you got to get a good jump on it now then.
Yeah, I think so. I think it might be a paintbrush in one hand and something to eat in the other hand, but we'll see. We'll see.
Don't get those mixed up. That could end for either really colorful teeth or a really messy sandpit.
Yeah, and it's wood stain, so I don't think it's going to end up too in too much of a good place if I eat it. But anyway, before we get too far off the rails, thank you again for coming on. Thank you to everyone out there listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and you've been listening to Jay Miller talking about productivity coaching for developers. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help The Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.